Why your cucumber leaves turn yellow. You walk into the garden expecting to see another day of healthy green growth. Instead, one cucumber leaf has turned yellow. Then you notice another. And another. The plant may still be climbing. New flowers may still be opening. Tiny cucumbers may even be forming. But something has changed. Yellow leaves are one of the most common warning signs in a cucumber garden, and also one of the easiest signs to misunderstand. Some gardeners immediately add fertilizer. Others water more. Some spray for disease. And some remove every yellow leaf they can find. But yellow is not a diagnosis. It is a message. To understand what the plant is saying, you have to look at where the yellowing begins, how it spreads, what the soil feels like, what the weather has been doing, and what other symptoms appear with it. Because two cucumber plants can have yellow leaves for completely different reasons. Today, we are going to learn how to tell the difference. When a yellow leaf is not a problem. Before trying to rescue the plant, ask one simple question. Which leaf is yellow? Cucumber plants continuously produce new growth near the tips of their vines. Older leaves near the base eventually become less useful. They may receive less light as the canopy becomes dense. Over time, some of these older leaves naturally lose their green color and decline. If one or two of the oldest lower leaves slowly turn yellow while the rest of the plant remains vigorous, flowers continue opening, and new leaves look healthy, there may be no serious problem at all. Plant's age. Leaves are temporary structures. The mistake is assuming that every yellow leaf requires treatment. The real warning sign is a pattern. Many leaves changing quickly. Yellowing spreading upward. Young leaves becoming pale. Brown lesions appearing. Leaves wilting while the soil remains wet. Or the entire plant losing vigor. Those patterns deserve investigation. And one of the first places to investigate is below the soil. Too much water, too little oxygen. Cucumbers love water. Their large leaves lose moisture quickly, and developing fruits contain a tremendous amount of water. This makes gardeners understandably afraid of letting cucumber plants dry out. But there is a difference between moist soil and saturated soil. Roots need oxygen. When a container or garden bed stays waterlogged for long periods, the air spaces in the soil fill with water. Root respiration becomes more difficult. Stressed roots become less effective at absorbing nutrients. The result above ground can be yellowing leaves, weak growth, wilting, and eventually root damage. This creates a dangerous misunderstanding. The gardener sees a wilted cucumber. The gardener adds water, but the soil was already wet. Now the root environment becomes even worse. So before watering a yellowing cucumber plant, touch the soil. Do not judge only by the surface. Check below it. If the root zone is still very wet, more water may not be the solution. Make sure containers have open drainage holes. Avoid letting pots sit permanently in standing water. And remember that watering frequency must change with weather, plant size, container size, and soil structure. The calendar does not know whether your cucumber is thirsty. The soil does. The opposite problem. Of course, cucumbers can also turn yellow because they are not receiving enough water. This is especially common in containers. A cucumber vine can become surprisingly large compared with the pot supporting it. On a hot, windy day, that mass of leaves can lose water quickly. The soil dries. The plant wilts. Repeated drought stress can damage older leaves and interfere with flowering and fruit development. So how can both overwatering and underwatering produce yellow leaves? Because yellowing is not the disease. It is the visible result of stress. The cause must be discovered from context. Dry soil, a lightweight container, wilt that improves after watering, and hot weather point in one direction. Constantly wet soil, poor drainage, slow recovery, and declining roots. Point in another. The leaf is only one piece of evidence. Nitrogen, the mobile nutrient. Now imagine the soil moisture seems reasonable. Drainage is good. The plant is still growing. But older leaves begin turning pale green and then yellow. The yellowing is relatively uniform rather than appearing as isolated spots. One possibility is nitrogen deficiency. Nitrogen is a mobile nutrient inside plants. When supplies become limited, the plant can move nitrogen from older tissues toward younger growth. That is why deficiency symptoms often appear first on older leaves. Container-grown cucumbers are particularly vulnerable because their roots are restricted to a limited amount of growing medium. Frequent watering can also carry soluble nutrients out through drainage holes. But there is an important warning here. Do not diagnose nitrogen deficiency from color alone. Overwatered roots can also struggle to absorb nutrients. Damaged roots can create deficiency-like symptoms even when fertilizer is present. Adding more fertilizer to an unhealthy root zone can make the situation worse. First, check water and roots. Then consider nutrition. The pattern between the veins. Not all yellow leaves turn uniformly yellow. Sometimes the veins remain greener while the tissue between them becomes pale. This pattern is called interveinal chlorosis. Several nutrient problems can produce patterns like this, and the age of the affected leaves matters. Magnesium deficiency, for example, often becomes visible on older leaves because magnesium is relatively mobile within the plant. Iron-related chlorosis more commonly affects younger leaves first, but visual diagnosis has limits. Soil pH, root health, excess fertilizer salts, and interactions between nutrients can all affect what the plant is able to absorb. This is why randomly adding one nutrient after another is risky. A gardener sees yellow, adds nitrogen, no improvement, adds magnesium, still no improvement, adds another fertilizer. Eventually, the root zone contains an excess of salts, and the original problem becomes harder to identify. A better approach is to read the pattern, examine growing conditions, and when the problem is serious or persistent, consider a soil or growing media test. Good gardening is investigation, not guessing. Sunlight and the shaded canopy. Cucumber vines can become dense, very dense. Large leaves overlap. Side shoots climb through one another. The upper canopy captures most of the sunlight, while lower leaves spend much of the day in shade. Those shaded leaves may gradually lose efficiency and yellow. This is not the same as a nutrient deficiency spreading through the entire plant. Look at location. If yellowing is concentrated deep inside a crowded canopy or on old leaves that receive little light, shading may be contributing. Training cucumbers vertically can help. A trellis lifts the vine, improves access to light, and increases airflow. Damaged or completely declining lower leaves can sometimes be removed carefully, but avoid aggressive defoliation. Healthy leaves are the plant's solar panels. The goal is not to create a bare vine. It is to create a canopy that can breathe and capture light efficiently. The tiny enemies under the leaf. Sometimes the answer is not in the soil at all. Turn the leaf over. The underside is where several cucumber pests prefer to hide. Spider mites are especially troublesome in hot, dry conditions. They are tiny, but their feeding can create fine pale stippling across leaves. As damage increases, leaves may appear yellow or bronzed. Fine webbing can sometimes become visible when infestations are severe. Aphids can also cluster on tender growth and the undersides of leaves, feeding on plant sap. Whiteflies may rise in a small cloud when disturbed. The important lesson is simple. Never diagnose a yellow cucumber leaf without looking underneath it. A 10-second inspection can prevent weeks of treating the wrong problem. Look for insects. Look for eggs. Look for webbing. Look for sticky residue. And inspect several leaves, not just one. If pests are present, early action is usually easier than dealing with a large infestation later. When yellow comes with spots, nutrient stress often creates patterns of discoloration. Disease frequently adds another clue. Spots. Cucumber leaves can be affected by several fungal and bacterial diseases. An exact diagnosis can depend on climate, symptoms, and sometimes laboratory confirmation. But gardeners can still recognize warning patterns. Yellow areas that become angular because they are limited by leaf veins. Brown or dead centers developing inside lesions. White powdery growth spreading across the leaf surface. Rapidly expanding patches after humid or wet weather. These are different from a simple old leaf fading evenly from green to yellow. For example, Downy mildew can create angular yellow lesions on cucumber leaves, often becoming more obvious as the disease progresses. Powdery mildew is famous for the white, powder-like growth that can cover leaf surfaces. Other pathogens can produce different spotting and blighting patterns. The exact treatment depends on the disease and local growing conditions. But several preventive habits are broadly useful. Improve airflow. Avoid unnecessary leaf wetness, especially late in the day. Remove severely diseased material when appropriate. Keep old plant debris from accumulating around the garden. And avoid assuming that fertilizer can cure an infectious disease. Sometimes the leaf is not hungry. It is infected. The roots can tell the story. When several possible causes remain, inspect the root environment. In containers, gently examining roots can reveal valuable information. Healthy roots are generally firm and light-colored, though exact. Appearance varies. Roots suffering from severe rot may become dark, soft, and unhealthy. Smelling. A cucumber can have plenty of fertilizer in the pot and still look nutrient deficient if damaged roots cannot function properly. This is why root health sits at the center of so many gardening problems. Watering, drainage, container size, temperature, fertilizer salts, disease. They all meet at the roots. If the root system fails, the leaves eventually tell the story. Read the map of the plant. The fastest way to understand yellow cucumber leaves is to stop looking at yellow as one symptom. Look at the entire plant as a map. Start with age. Are the oldest leaves yellow or the newest leaves? Then location. Is the problem at the bottom, top, inside the canopy, or everywhere? Then pattern. Is the yellowing uniform? Between the veins? Spotted? Angular? Stippled? Then texture. Is the leaf still firm? Wilted? Dry and crispy? Soft? Then look below. Is the soil dry, evenly moist, or saturated? And finally, look underneath the leaves. Are there pests, webbing, eggs, or other clues? Those questions transform a vague symptom into a much smaller set of possibilities. The 7-point cucumber check. If your cucumber leaves are turning yellow, work through these 7 questions. 1. Is the yellowing limited mainly to 1 or 2 old lower leaves? If yes, normal aging or shading may be involved. 2. What is the soil moisture below the surface? Do not water again until you know. 3. Does the container drain freely? And are the roots healthy? 4. Is the yellowing uniform on older leaves, or does it form a pattern between the veins? That may help narrow possible nutrient issues. 5. How much direct sunlight does the plant receive, and is the canopy extremely crowded? 6. What is hiding under the leaves? Check carefully for mites, aphids, whiteflies, and other pests. 7. Are there distinct spots, lesions, powdery growth, or rapidly spreading damage? If yes, investigate disease rather than automatically reaching for fertilizer. Most importantly, change one major thing at a time when possible. If you water more, fertilize heavily, prune half the plant, and spray for pests on the same afternoon, you may never know what the real problem was. Observation first. Intervention second. The leaf that saved the plant. A yellow cucumber leaf can feel like bad news, but it can also be an early warning. The plant is giving you time. Time to notice that the soil is staying wet too long. Time to recognize that a container has become too small. Time to see mites before they cover the entire vine. Time to correct a nutrient imbalance. Time to improve airflow before disease spreads. The gardener who ignores every yellow leaf may miss those warnings. But the gardener who panics at every yellow leaf can cause just as much damage. The skill lies between those extremes. Observe without panic. Investigate before treating. And remember that the goal is not to keep every leaf perfectly green forever. The goal is to keep the plant healthy enough to grow, flower, and produce. A cucumber vine is constantly changing. Old leaves disappear. New leaves unfold. Flowers open for a short time. Fruit expands almost unbelievably fast. The plant is not a static object. It is a living system responding every hour to sunlight, water, temperature, nutrients, insects, and the soil around its roots. Once you understand that, Yellow leaves become less mysterious. They become information. So the next time you find a yellow leaf among the green vines, do not immediately reach for the watering can or fertilizer bottle. Look at where it is. Look at the pattern. Touch the soil. Turn the leaf over. Read the plant. Because the color yellow is only the beginning of the story. The real answer is hidden in the clues around it.